Greetings, fellow seekers of truth and whispers from the ancient past. Tonight, we embark on a journey across the shimmering waters of the Mediterranean to uncover the story of civilization whose name might not echo as loudly as Rome or Egypt, yet whose invisible hand profoundly shaped the world we know. They were the masters of the waves, the architects of trade, and the silent bearers of an innovation that changed human communication forever. Settle in, find your comfort, and prepare for a deep dive. Before we begin, a simple gesture of a like, a comment, or a share truly helps these stories reach more ears and minds. Thank you, and let the narration unfold. Good evening, and welcome back to Vibing History. Tonight, we embark on a journey through the mists of time, not to a grand empire with monumental architecture, but to a collection of fiercely independent city-states, whose legacy is woven into the very fabric of our modern world, yet whose own story remains tantalizingly elusive. We're going to explore the enigmatic people we know as the Phoenicians. Now, when you hear the word Phoenician, what comes to mind? Perhaps masterful sailors, daring traders, or the inventors of an alphabet that quite literally changed the way humanity communicates. And you'd be right. But tonight, we're going to dig deeper, beyond the familiar narratives, into a fundamental question that challenges our understanding of who these people truly were. Were the Phoenicians, in essence, just Canaanites? It's a question that brings us face to face with the very nature of identity in the ancient world. You see, the name Phoenicia itself, as we understand it, wasn't a term they used for themselves. It's a Greek exonym, a name given to them by outsiders. Imagine if tomorrow, the world started calling France the land of baguettes. It might be accurate in some ways, but it hardly captures the rich, complex tapestry of French identity. For the people inhabiting those vibrant coastal cities of what is now Lebanon and parts of Syria, their reality was far more rooted in their immediate surroundings. They were the people of Tyre, of Sidon, of Byblos. And, most intriguingly, they referred to themselves and their land as Canaan. This isn't just a linguistic curiosity. It's a crucial piece of the puzzle that has led modern scholars to a fascinating conclusion. The distinction between the Bronze Age Canaanites and the Iron Age Phoenicians, after around 1200 BC, might well be, as some historians put it, artificial. They were, in essence, a continuation, a direct evolution of the Canaanite culture, a tenacious lineage that weathered the storm of the late Bronze Age collapse with remarkable resilience. While empires crumbled and civilizations vanished, the core cultural traditions of these coastal communities persisted, almost uninterrupted. Think about that for a moment. The late Bronze Age collapse, a cataclysmic period that saw the dramatic decline or outright destruction of most of the great powers of the Near East, the Egyptians, the Hittites, the Mitanni. It was a time of widespread upheaval, famine, and migration. Yet, nestled along the Levantine coast, these Canaanite city-states, soon to be known as Phoenician, found a way not just to survive, but to thrive in the ensuing power vacuum. They didn't just rebuild. They repurposed, reestablished, and ultimately reshaped the ancient world. To truly appreciate this, we need to rewind to the very origins of these Semitic-speaking peoples. Their culture didn't just appear out of nowhere. It developed in situ, meaning right there on that very land, evolving from earlier Chalcolithic cultures, particularly the Gasilian. This Gasilian culture, in turn, emerged from an even older tapestry of nomadic pastoral complexes, a fusion of ancestral Natufian and Harifian traditions with the early farming cultures of the pre-pottery Neolithic B. We're talking about the domestication of animals, the very dawn of the Neolithic Revolution in the Levant. This is a deep, continuous heritage stretching back millennia. So, when we consider the Phoenicians, we're not looking at a sudden emergence of a completely new people. We're observing a powerful adaptation. They inherited the deep-seated traditions, the language, the religious practices, and the societal structures of their Canaanite ancestors. They were, in essence, Canaanites who, facing a world transformed by collapse, embraced the sea with an unparalleled intensity. Now, some ancient Greek historians, like Herodotus, perpetuated a different narrative, claiming the Phoenicians migrated from the Erythraean Sea around 2750 BC, or even from Bahrain, as Strabo reported. And for a time, some archaeologists, particularly those working in the Persian Gulf, lent credence to these traditions, suggesting a migration linked to the collapse of the Dilmun civilization. But the overwhelming consensus among modern scholars firmly rejects this idea. The archaeological record, coupled with historical evidence, paints a picture of millennia of continuous population in the region. And perhaps most compellingly, recent genetic research has added a powerful new layer to this understanding. Present-day Lebanese, who inhabit much of ancient Phoenicia, derive the vast majority of their ancestry from a Canaanite-related population. This is not the story of migrants, but of an indigenous people enduring and evolving. The earliest glimpses we have of these coastal Canaanites, who would later be called Phoenicians, come from the accounts of Pharaoh Thutmose III around 1479 to 1425 BC. The Egyptians, in their conquest narratives, referred to them as Phoenicu, which literally translates to carpenters. This epithet, this foreign label, is fascinating in itself. It highlights one of their earliest and most crucial industries, the lumber trade. Egypt, a land of sun-baked mud brick and papyrus, desperately needed the magnificent cedar wood that grew in abundance in the Levantine mountains. And these carpenters of the coast were the skilled intermediaries, providing Egypt with access not just to timber, but to Mesopotamian trade routes. By the mid-14th century BC, these Phoenician city-states, Byblos, Arwad, Elasa, and later Tyre, Sidon, and Brut, were considered favored cities by the Egyptians. They enjoyed considerable autonomy, flourishing as centers of trade and bronze-making. Byblos, in particular, became the primary terminus for precious goods like tin and lapis lazuli, arriving from as far east as Afghanistan. The seeds of their later maritime dominance were clearly being sown, even under Egyptian suzerainty. However, the political landscape of the Late Bronze Age was a turbulent one. The Amarna letters, a treasure trove of diplomatic correspondence from this era, reveal a period of intense rivalry and conflict. From 1350 to 1300 BC, the neighboring Amorites and Hittites began to encroach upon Phoenician cities, particularly in the north. Egypt's grip on its coastal holdings weakened, from Ugarit in northern Syria all the way down to Byblos. Then came the cataclysm. Between 1200 and 1150 BC, the Late Bronze Age collapse swept across the eastern Mediterranean like a wildfire. It was a period of mysterious origins, perhaps triggered by a combination of climate change, widespread migrations of sea peoples, internal revolts, and economic disruptions. Empires that had stood for centuries crumbled. Yet, amidst this chaos, the Phoenician city-states, like resilient reeds in a hurricane, managed to not only survive, but to consolidate their independence. This era, often described as a Phoenician Renaissance, saw city-states like Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos reassert their political independence and vigorously pursue their maritime interests. By the end of the 11th century BC, new geopolitical alliances, such as the famous one between Tyre and Israel, further solidified their position in the Levant. And crucially, their maritime activity expanded beyond mere mercantilism. It began to encompass colonization. The Phoenicians were no longer just traders. They were explorers, establishing outposts and settlements across the Mediterranean. The recovery of the Mediterranean economy in the 10th century BC can largely be credited to these intrepid Phoenician mariners and merchants. They re-established the crucial long-distance trade routes between Egypt and Mesopotamia, breathing life back into a disrupted world. They founded ports, warehouses, markets, and settlements on Cyprus, Sardinia, the Balearic Islands, Sicily, and Malta, and along the coasts of North Africa and the Iberian Peninsula. We have archaeological evidence, such as Phoenician hacked silver from this period, bearing lead isotope ratios that match ores in Sardinia and Spain, demonstrating the incredible reach of their trade networks. By the 10th century BC, Tyre had emerged as the undisputed leader, the wealthiest and most powerful of the Phoenician city-states, especially under the reign of Hiram I. The Hebrew Bible, though its historical reliability is sometimes debated, speaks of the expertise of Phoenician artisans sent by Hiram I to assist King Solomon with his grand construction projects in Jerusalem. This alludes to a well-developed and highly respected craft industry in Phoenicia, a testament to their skill and ingenuity. During the rule of the priest Ithabal, from 887 to 856 BC, Tyre even expanded its territory, stretching as far north as Beirut and encompassing parts of Cyprus. This was an unusual act of aggression for the Phoenicians, who generally preferred commerce over conquest. But it was the closest they ever came to forming a unified territorial state. Ithabal, in a bold statement of dominance, declared himself king of the Sidonians, a title later echoed in Greek and Jewish accounts. The late Iron Age, particularly between 750 and 650 BC, marked the zenith of Phoenician shipping, mercantile activity, and cultural influence. Their impact was so profound that it led to the Orientalization of Greek cultural and artistic conventions. Their fine textiles, especially those dyed with the coveted Tyrian purple, were highly prized. Even Homer, in his Iliad, composed during this period, speaks of the quality of Phoenician clothing and metal goods. They were the arbiters of luxury and sophistication in the ancient Mediterranean. It was during this period of expansion that one of their most famous colonies, Carthage, was founded, established by Phoenicians from Tyre, probably to serve as an anchorage and supply point for their merchants. Carthage, or meaning new city, in Punic, would go on to become a major power in its own right. While some ancient sources suggest an earlier foundation around 1215 BC, the generally accepted date by modern historians is 814 BC, famously associated with the legendary Queen Dido. Carthage would grow into a vast, multi-ethnic empire, ultimately clashing with Rome in the epic Punic Wars. But as with all great stories, there was an inevitable shift. The Phoenicians, concentrated along a narrow coastal strip, lacked the sheer size and population to support a large military. Their strength lay in their fleets, their merchants, and their diplomatic acumen. As neighboring empires grew in power, the Phoenicians increasingly found themselves under the sway of foreign rulers, their autonomy gradually circumscribed. The Assyrian domination began with King Shalmaneser III in 858 BC. Though he initially maintained good relations, demanding tribute rather than outright annexation, this changed with Tiglath-Pileser III in 744 BC. Northern Phoenicia was annexed, and even the powerful city-states of Tyre and Byblos were reduced to tributary states. Rebellions, though bravely fought, were ultimately crushed. Sidon, in a particularly brutal episode, was destroyed by Esarhaddon, its inhabitants enslaved, and a new city built upon its ruins. Following the collapse of the Assyrian Empire, the Babylonians, under Nabopolassar and Nebuchadnezzar II, rose to prominence. The Phoenician cities again revolted, leading to Nebuchadnezzar's famous, though perhaps exaggerated, 13-year siege of Tyre. While the city was not destroyed, its autonomy was further eroded. Then came the Persians. In 539 BC, Cyrus the Great, founder of the Achaemenid Empire, conquered Babylon. The Phoenicians, with their characteristic pragmatism, wisely yielded to the Persians. They were consolidated into a satrapy, forced to pay tribute, but crucially, allowed considerable autonomy. They were divided into 4 vassal kingdoms: Sidon, Tyre, Arwad, and Byblos, each retaining local kings and even the right to mint their own coinage. Under Persian rule, the Phoenicians remained an invaluable asset, particularly for their unparalleled maritime prowess. They furnished the bulk of the Persian fleet during the Greco-Persian Wars, building canals and pontoon bridges for Xerxes I. Yet, Even this loyalty didn't protect them from Xerxes' wrath after his defeat at the Battle of Salamis, which he blamed on their perceived cowardice. Later, a failed rebellion led by King Tinnes of Sidon against Artaxerxes III resulted in Sidon's destruction, briefly allowing Tyre to reassert its dominance. This brings us to the Hellenistic period, with the arrival of Alexander the Great. Phoenicia was among the first areas he conquered during his sweep across Western Asia. Tyre, then the largest and most important city, capitulated after a brutal 7-month siege. Its refusal to allow Alexander to visit its temple, to Melkart, led to a horrific reprisal. 2,000 of its leading citizens were crucified. The rest of Phoenicia, seeing the fate of Tyre, largely surrendered peacefully. Alexander's empire pursued a policy of Hellenization, spreading Greek culture, religion, and sometimes language. But in Phoenicia, this was surprisingly limited. With few exceptions, Phoenician city-states retained their native names, and Greek settlement appears to have been minimal. The Phoenicians, already having long-standing commercial and even mythological ties with the Greeks, adapted to Macedonian rule with perhaps greater ease than some other conquered peoples. After Alexander's death, his empire fragmented. The Phoenicians found themselves caught between the warring successors, primarily the Seleucids and the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt, becoming a prize repeatedly contested during the Syrian Wars. Yet, even under these foreign rulers, they maintained a considerable degree of autonomy and self-governance. The Seleucid dynastic wars saw the Phoenician cities largely govern themselves, with some even falling under Jewish influence after the Maccabean revolt. This era of Hellenistic influence came to an end with the seizure of the Seleucid kingdom by Tigranes the Great of Armenia. So, as we conclude this first segment, consider the profound paradox of the Phoenicians, a people who didn't call themselves by the name we know them by, a civilization whose existence as a distinct entity is debated by scholars. Yet, a culture that emerged from the enduring roots of Canaanite society, weathered monumental collapses, outmaneuvered empires, and, through their sheer ingenuity and seafaring mastery, laid the very foundations of the interconnected Mediterranean world that would define classical civilization. The question of whether they were just Canaanites isn't a diminishment. It's an acknowledgement of a remarkable continuity, a testament to a deep-seated identity that adapted and innovated, leaving an indelible mark on history, even as its own internal narrative remains, for us, largely a mystery etched in the sands and beneath the waves. Next, we will delve into how these masters of the waves forged the ancient world's first true global trade network, and how their purple-dyed sails propelled not just goods, but ideas across vast distances, connecting disparate cultures in an unprecedented way. You won't want to miss it. Welcome back, my friends, to Vibing History. Settle in, find your rhythm, and let the ancient whispers guide you. Tonight, we journey further into the heart of a civilization that etched its legacy not with grand armies or monumental pyramids, but with the steady churn of oars and the whisper of distant winds. Last time, we explored the very essence of the Phoenicians, dissecting the question of their identity, and discovering that beneath the Greek moniker, they were, in their own eyes, the resilient inheritors of Canaan. But to truly understand these people, to feel the pulse of their ambition and the rhythm of their innovation, we must now turn our gaze to the very element that defined them, the sea. For it was upon the restless waves of the Mediterranean that the Phoenicians would forge something entirely new, something unprecedented in the ancient world, the first truly global trade network. Imagine, if you will, the world around 1200 BC, the late Bronze Age, a period of immense interconnectedness and power, is in its death throes. Great empires, like those of Egypt and the Hittites, are collapsing under mysterious pressures, leaving behind a power vacuum, a fractured landscape of chaos and uncertainty. The established pathways of trade, the very arteries of ancient commerce, are severed. It is a time of upheaval, a time when lesser civilizations might simply vanish, consumed by the encroaching darkness. Yet, amidst this widespread collapse, a remarkable thing happens. The Phoenicians, nestled along their narrow coastal strip, not only survive but thrive. They are, in many ways, perfectly positioned. Their cities, Byblos, Sidon, Tyre, were already accustomed to a precarious existence, often caught between the ambitions of greater powers. They were resilient, adaptable, and most importantly, they possessed an innate understanding of the sea. While other societies licked their wounds, these city-states, each fiercely independent yet bound by a common cultural thread, looked outwards. They saw not a broken world, but a world hungry for connection, a world ripe for their particular genius. This period, from roughly 1200 to 800 BC, is often called the Phoenician Renaissance, and it is a title well-deserved. The Mediterranean, once a patchwork of regional economies, was about to be woven together by the Phoenician loom. Their vessels, sleek and sturdy, became the conduits of recovery, re-establishing long-distance trade routes between a reeling Egypt and a resurgent Mesopotamia by the 10th century BC. Think of it. At a time when much of the known world was still reeling from systemic collapse, these mariners and merchants were already charting a new course, literally and figuratively, for economic revival. Their method was ingenious in its simplicity and daring in its execution. They weren't conquerors in the traditional sense, not in the way of the Assyrians or Egyptians. Instead, they were pragmatists, entrepreneurs, and masters of logistics. They established a sprawling network of ports, warehouses, markets, and settlements, stretching across the entirety of the Mediterranean. From the shores of Cyprus to the distant reaches of the Iberian Peninsula, from the sun-drenched islands of Sicily and Sardinia to the rugged coasts of North Africa, their presence was felt. These weren't always grand cities, not initially. Many were merely trading posts, strategic anchors in a vast maritime web, designed to facilitate the flow of goods. But what goods, my friends? We're talking about raw materials and finished products, luxuries and necessities, traveling across thousands of miles of open water. Consider the evidence. Hack silver, a common form of early currency, found in Phoenician settlements from this period, bears lead isotope ratios that precisely match ore's mined in Sardinia and Spain. This isn't just a casual exchange. This is a sophisticated, long-range supply chain, a testament to their ability to source, transport, and distribute precious metals on an unprecedented scale. By the 10th century BC, one city-state, in particular, rose to dazzling prominence, Tyre. Under the reign of King Hiram I, roughly 969 to 936 BC, Tyre became the undisputed jewel of Phoenicia, a beacon of wealth and power. It's during this era that we find tantalizing glimpses of Phoenician influence in the biblical accounts of King Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. Though some modern scholars debate the exact historical accuracy of these texts, the mere suggestion that the expertise of Tyrian artisans was sought after for such a monumental project speaks volumes about their reputation for skill and craftsmanship. Imagine the Phoenician master builders, with their knowledge of cedar wood and intricate metalwork, contributing to one of the most iconic structures of the ancient world. But Phoenician ambition wasn't confined to peaceful trade. Even though direct conquest was rare, they weren't entirely averse to expanding their territorial reach when the opportunity arose. Under the priest Ithobal from 887 to 856 BC, Tyre, in an unusual act of aggression for the Phoenicians, expanded its dominion northward to Beirut and even established a foothold in Cyprus. This was the closest these fiercely independent city-states ever came to forming a unified territorial state. So significant was this expansion that Ithobal declared himself king of the Sidonians, a title that echoed through Greek and Jewish accounts, reflecting Tyre's newfound supremacy. The Late Iron Age, roughly 750 to 650 BC, marked the zenith of Phoenician shipping, mercantile activity, and cultural influence. This was a period when their impact was not merely economic but profoundly cultural. The Orientalization of Greek art and culture, a fascinating phenomenon of the time, bears the unmistakable imprint of Phoenician aesthetic sensibilities. From intricate jewelry to mythological motifs, the Greeks, those giants of classical civilization, were deeply influenced by the vibrant artistic traditions brought across the sea by Phoenician traders. And what did these traders carry? Among their most celebrated goods were textiles, dyed with that legendary, almost mythical Tyrian purple. This wasn't just a color, it was a statement. Derived from the murex marine snail, a creature once abundant in the coastal waters of the eastern Mediterranean, this dye produced a violet purple so rich and enduring that it became synonymous with royalty, wealth, and power across the ancient world. The extraction process was arduous, demanding thousands of snails for a single gram of dye, making it exceptionally rare and, therefore, exceptionally expensive. Tyrian purple became the ultimate status symbol, adorning the robes of emperors and kings, a testament to the Phoenicians' mastery of luxury production. Even Homer, in his epic Iliad, composed during this very period, sings the praises of Phoenician clothing and metal goods, highlighting their quality and desirability. But the story of their influence extends far beyond luxury goods. The Phoenicians were innovators in every sense of the word. They were pioneers in mass production, turning out flasks, beads, and other glass objects in quantities unheard of before, shipping them across the Mediterranean to eager markets. Imagine the sheer logistical challenge of organizing such an enterprise, of consistently producing and distributing goods across such a vast geographical expanse. Their craftsmanship was legendary, encompassing engraved and chased metalwork in bronze, iron, and gold, exquisite ivory carvings, and skilled woodwork. The biblical accounts of a Tyrian craftsman commissioned to build and decorate Solomon's temple, regardless of their precise historicity, underscore the widespread respect for Phoenician artisans by the mid-10th century BC. Even the Iliad again speaks of Sidonian women renowned for their embroidered robes and Sidonian craftsmanship, producing masterpieces of chased silver. The Assyrians, those formidable empire builders, seemingly had a particular fondness for Phoenician ivory work, filling their palaces with vast quantities of these delicate and intricate pieces. Beyond these artistic and industrial achievements, the Phoenicians also revolutionized foundational aspects of ancient life. Consider viticulture, the cultivation of grapes for wine. While the exact origins of domesticated grapevines are debated, it's widely accepted that the Phoenicians played a crucial role in propagating viticulture across the Mediterranean. They established vineyards and wineries in their colonies in North Africa, Sicily, France, and Spain, even teaching winemaking techniques to their trading partners. The ancient Iberians, for example, began producing wine from local grape varieties after encountering the Phoenicians, and these Iberian cultivars would later form the basis of much of Western European wine production. The Phoenician amphora, a standardized container for both dry and liquid goods, became a universal unit of measurement for almost 2 millennia, a silent testament to their pragmatic brilliance. And then their shipbuilding. This was, after all, the bedrock of their entire enterprise. As early as 1200 BC, texts from Ugarit suggest that Canaanite merchant ships could carry staggering cargoes of up to 450 tons. In the first millennium BC, Phoenician merchant ships routinely carried between 100 and 500 tons. They pioneered the use of Phoenician joints, a sophisticated system of locked mortise and tenon joints to secure hull planking underwater. This method was so effective that it spread across the Mediterranean, influencing Greek and Roman shipbuilding, with the Romans themselves calling it coagmenta punicana. This wasn't just building boats. This was advancing maritime engineering. They are even credited by some scholars with introducing the bireme, a ship with 2 banks of oars, and even the trireme, the most advanced warship of the ancient Mediterranean. Imagine the sleek, powerful lines of these vessels, cutting through the waves, propelled by the synchronized rhythm of hundreds of oarsmen. Bas-relief carvings from the Palace of Nineveh, depicting the Tyrian fleet fleeing before a siege around 700 BC, offer a visual testament to their advanced naval architecture. While the exact timeline and origin of the trireme remain debated, the Phoenicians were undoubtedly at the forefront of naval innovation. They even developed self-cleaning artificial harbors, an astonishing feat of engineering for their time, discovered at sites like Sidon and Tyre. In the earliest examples of admiralty law, the legal framework governing maritime commerce, also appear to have emerged from the Levant, another crucial innovation born of their expansive trade. But the most profound and enduring legacy of their vast maritime network, a legacy that echoes through every word I speak and every letter you read, is the alphabet. Around 1050 BC, building upon the Proto-Semitic script, the Phoenicians developed their own phonetic alphabet, a system of 22 consonants that transformed communication. Through their tireless voyages, they spread this revolutionary tool across the Mediterranean, to Anatolia, North Africa, and ultimately to Europe. It was this Phoenician alphabet, carried on the decks of their merchant ships, that the Greeks adopted and adapted in the 8th century BC. This wasn't a single event, a sudden transfer, but a gradual, organic process of cultural exchange that occurred over generations of commercial interaction. The legendary Phoenician hero Cadmus is often credited with bringing the alphabet to Greece, a mythical echo of a profound historical truth. From the Greek alphabet, in turn, sprang the Latin and Cyrillic scripts, the very foundations of countless modern languages. So, as these ancient mariners navigated the treacherous waters of the Mediterranean, they were not just transporting goods. They were transporting ideas, technologies, and, ultimately, the very tools of civilization itself. Their ships weren't just vessels of commerce. They were carriers of culture, floating universities of ancient knowledge. Think of it. The beer they traded across their colonies, particularly along the North African coast, even reaching the Basque Country, where it's believed they introduced beer brewing. The cedar logs they sold to Egypt for vast sums, providing a crucial resource for a land without sufficient timber. The Nubian gold they brought back from Egypt, the silver from Sardinia and Iberia, the tin from distant Britain, possibly even by way of the Rhone Valley or Cornwall, a testament to their truly global reach, venturing beyond the Pillars of Hercules into the open Atlantic. Their economy was a marvel of resourcefulness. Lacking significant natural resources beyond their ubiquitous cedar wood, they transformed themselves into an industrial powerhouse, manufacturing and trading goods with an unparalleled efficiency. From glassmaking to intricate metalwork, from ivory carving to woodworking, they mastered techniques and catered to diverse markets, producing items that were both practical and luxurious. This isn't just boring history for sleep, my friends. This is the pulse of ancient ingenuity, the story of how a small group of city-states, through sheer determination and unparalleled maritime skill, reshaped the economic and cultural landscape of the entire Mediterranean. They didn't just survive the collapse of the Bronze Age. They spearheaded the recovery, connecting disparate civilizations and laying the very foundations for the classical world that would follow. The Phoenicians were not conquerors, but connectors. They were the original globalists, weaving a tapestry of trade that brought distant lands into conversation, sharing not just commodities, but ideas, innovations, and the enduring power of the written word. It is this enduring legacy, forged on the waves and carried on the winds, that continues to shape our world, even now, thousands of years later. Next, we will delve deeper into those specific innovations, the purple and the pen, exploring the truly transformative impact of their industrial prowess and, of course, the enduring power of their alphabet. Stay with me as we continue to journey through the currents of history. And so, as the dust of fragmented identities settled, revealing the Canaanite core of what we now call Phoenicia, we begin to truly appreciate the incredible tapestry woven by these remarkable people. Our journey, thus far, has shown us a society intimately connected to the sea, a people who, despite a lack of unified political identity, mastered the ancient world's most vital highways, the waves themselves. They navigated not just the Mediterranean, but the intricate currents of ancient geopolitics, establishing themselves as the indispensable middlemen, the silent architects of a global trade network that laid the very foundations for the classical civilizations to come. But their impact extended far beyond mere commerce. The Phoenicians were not simply transporters of goods. They were catalysts of culture, purveyors of progress, and innovators whose ingenuity left an indelible mark on human civilization. They held secrets to a wealth that surpassed gold and silver, a knowledge that reshaped communication, artistry, and even the very fabric of daily life. Imagine, for a moment, the vibrant city-states of Byblos, Sidon, and Tyre at their zenith. Picture the bustling docks, the scent of cedar and spices mingling with the salty sea air, the ceaseless chatter of merchants from across the known world. It was in these dynamic hubs of activity, amidst the relentless pursuit of trade, that the Phoenicians honed their crafts and perfected their technologies. They weren't just manufacturing products. They were crafting the future, piece by meticulous piece. Let's first delve into perhaps their most profound legacy, a gift so fundamental it underpins almost every word you hear, every book you read, every digital message you send: the alphabet. Before the Phoenicians, writing systems were complex, often requiring years of dedicated study to master. Hieroglyphs and cuneiform, while beautiful and expressive, were cumbersome for the swift communication demanded by a burgeoning maritime trade empire. The Phoenicians, ever pragmatic, recognized this bottleneck. What they did was nothing short of revolutionary. Building upon earlier Proto-Semitic scripts, they streamlined the written word into a concise, elegant system of just 22 symbols. Each symbol represented a consonant sound, stripping away the complex pictograms and ideograms of older systems. It was a language of merchants, designed for efficiency, for recording transactions, for dispatching orders across vast distances with unprecedented speed and clarity. Think of the leap this represented. No longer did scribes need to memorize hundreds, if not thousands, of characters. With 22 simple shapes, anyone could learn to write, to read, to communicate. This wasn't merely an innovation. It was a democratization of knowledge, an intellectual revolution born of economic necessity. As their ships plied the waters from the Levant to the Iberian Peninsula, they carried not just goods, but this incredible script. It was a viral idea, an intellectual export that spread with the same zeal as their prized here in purple. The Greeks, those great intellectual inheritors of the ancient world, encountered this Phoenician alphabet, embraced it, and adapted it, adding vowels to create their own elegant system. And from the Greek alphabet, in turn, sprang the Latin alphabet, which forms the basis of countless languages spoken today, including English. Even the Cyrillic and Arabic scripts bear the echoes of this ancient Phoenician ingenuity. So, the next time you're at a shopping list, send an email, or simply read these words, remember the Phoenicians, those ancient merchants who inadvertently laid the groundwork for our entire written world. But the pen was not their only tool of transformation. The Phoenicians were master craftsmen and industrial pioneers. Lacking abundant natural resources beyond their magnificent cedar forests, they became adept at manufacturing a diverse range of goods, transforming raw materials into coveted luxury items and everyday necessities. They were early adopters of what we might call mass production, creating standardized items like glassware, pottery, and metalwork in quantities sufficient for a vast international market. Their glassmaking techniques, for instance, were highly advanced for their time. They produced exquisite flasks, intricate beads, and other glass objects that were shipped across the Mediterranean, making Phoenicia the leading source of glassware in antiquity. Imagine the shimmering beauty of these translucent creations, brought from distant lands, a testament to Phoenician artistry and enterprise. They mastered the potter's wheel, producing amphorae and other vessels not just for local use, but for the rigorous demands of long-distance transport, designing them to hold and preserve their precious cargo, wine, oil, and even beer, for months at sea. And, speaking of wine, the Phoenicians were instrumental in its propagation across the Mediterranean. While the common grapevine likely originated in Transcaucasia, it was the Phoenicians who helped spread viticulture throughout their colonies in North Africa, Sicily, France, and Spain. They didn't just sell wine, they cultivated it, establishing vineyards and wineries, teaching their trading partners the art of winemaking. It's a remarkable thought that many of the celebrated wine regions of Western Europe today may owe their ancient origins to the industrious Phoenician merchants. Then there was the legendary Tyrian purple. Ah, the color of kings, of emperors, of unparalleled luxury. This isn't just a dye. It's a testament to Phoenician ingenuity, their mastery of a highly complex and labor-intensive industrial process. Imagine the arduous task, harvesting countless murex marine snails, extracting the tiny hypobranchial gland from each, and then, through a secret process, transforming this humble secretion into a dye of astonishing, vibrant violet purple. The sheer effort, the unique skill, the exclusive control they held over its production made Tyrian purple extraordinarily expensive, instantly elevating it to a symbol of power, wealth, and status. It became synonymous with the elite, adorning the robes of Assyrian kings and, later, the togas of Roman senators. The Phoenicians, in essence, created the world's first luxury brand, a color so exclusive, so coveted, that it echoed through the annals of ancient history. Their industrial prowess extended to mining as well. While their homeland had limited mineral wealth, the Phoenicians sought resources further afield. Cyprus provided copper, and Sardinia, with its rich deposits of copper and lead, became a significant site for their mining operations. But it was the Iberian Peninsula that truly held a treasure trove of metals: gold, silver, copper, iron, tin, and lead. The Phoenicians, and later their Carthaginian descendants, extracted prodigious amounts of silver from this region, a testament to their engineering and organizational skills. While direct evidence is scarce, it's highly probable that these large-scale mining operations relied heavily on slave labor, a harsh reality reflecting the practices of the ancient world. But perhaps the most visible, the most tangible expression of Phoenician innovation lay in their mastery of the sea itself. Their unparalleled shipbuilding skills were the engine of their entire civilization. Long before others, they built merchant ships capable of carrying hundreds of tons of cargo, traversing vast distances with impressive speed. They pioneered a revolutionary shipbuilding technique known as Phoenician joints, or locked mortise and tenon joints, to secure the planking of their ship hulls underwater. This method involved precisely cut mortises and tenons, secured with dowels, creating incredibly strong and watertight hulls. This innovation spread throughout the Mediterranean, adopted by the Greeks and Romans, who even referred to it as coagmenta punicana, Punic joints. This technological leap allowed for larger, more robust vessels, capable of withstanding the rigors of open-sea voyages. And it wasn't just merchant vessels. The Phoenicians are credited with developing advanced warships. While the exact origins are debated, many scholars believe they were among the first to introduce the bireme, a ship with two banks of oars, and potentially even the formidable trireme, with its 3 tiers of oarsmen. Imagine the power and speed of these vessels, cutting through the waves, a testament to advanced engineering and synchronized human effort. Such innovations cemented their reputation as the premier maritime power of their age. Beyond the ships themselves, the Phoenicians contributed to numerous other maritime inventions. The amphora, that familiar two-handled pottery container, was a Phoenician invention, becoming a standardized unit of volume for centuries. They also developed ingenious self-cleaning artificial harbors, remarkable feats of hydraulic engineering for their time, at sites like Sidon and Tyre. Their understanding of navigation and cartography was paramount, allowing them to explore and chart vast stretches of the Mediterranean and beyond. So, when we look at the Phoenicians, we see more than just traders. We see the originators of the alphabet that underpins our modern communication. We see industrial magnates, mastering complex production processes and creating luxury goods that defined ancient status. We see agricultural innovators, spreading the cultivation of wine across continents. And we see unparalleled mariners and engineers, whose shipbuilding techniques and naval designs literally propelled the ancient world forward. Their civilization, though often described as lost due to the scarcity of their own historical accounts, speaks to us through these innovations, through the very tools and concepts that continue to shape our world. The purple and the pen, the ships and the trade routes, these are the threads with which the Phoenicians wove their enduring legacy, a legacy that continues to resonate quietly, profoundly, through the ages. We are, in so many ways, living in the world they helped to create. Hello, and welcome back to Vibing History. Settle in, find that comfortable spot, and let's journey back in time, allowing the ancient echoes to fill your space. Tonight, we're continuing our exploration of the enigmatic Phoenicians, those master mariners and traders who, for so long, seemed to slip through the cracks of historical understanding. We've unraveled the layers of their identity, sailing the choppy waters of whether they were simply Canaanites, and we've charted the vast ocean of their global trade network, seeing how their purple dyes and precious metals truly forged the economic backbone of the ancient Mediterranean. We've even dipped our toes into the innovative currents of their alphabet and shipbuilding, uncovering how these practical, seafaring people left an indelible mark on civilization itself. But what happens when these titans of trade, these independent city-states, encounter forces far grander and far more destructive than rival merchant ships? What happens when the whispers of burgeoning empires turn into the thundering march of armies? When the desire for commerce gives way to the hunger for conquest? Tonight, our focus shifts to a period of immense challenge and adaptation as we delve into the survival against giants. The Phoenicians struggle for autonomy under the shadows of colossal empires. Imagine, if you will, the narrow coastal strip that defined much of Phoenicia. From Arwood in the north to Mount Carmel in the south, these bustling city-states like Byblos, Sidon, and Tyre were vibrant hubs of industry and innovation. Their wealth wasn't built on vast agricultural lands or sprawling territories, but on the nimble grace of their ships, the shrewdness of their merchants, and the artistry of their craftspeople. This fundamental difference, their very geography and economic model, meant that while other civilizations might raise massive land armies, the Phoenicians were inherently limited in their military might. Their strength lay in their fleets, their diplomacy, and their ability to become indispensable intermediaries. This inherent vulnerability, this reliance on trade rather than territorial conquest, would define their relationship with the monolithic powers that began to emerge around them. The late Bronze Age collapse, that cataclysmic event we've discussed in other documentaries, proved to be a strange kind of blessing for the Phoenicians. While mighty empires like the Egyptians and the Hittites faltered and crumbled, the Phoenician city-states, resilient and adaptable, not only survived but thrived in the ensuing power vacuum. This, my friends, was their Phoenician Renaissance, a golden age that saw them re-establish long-distance trade, extending their reach far across the Mediterranean. They weren't just transporting goods, they were carrying the very seeds of economic recovery, linking Mesopotamia and Egypt once more, and setting up their own outposts, their own market hubs, from Cyprus to the far reaches of the Iberian Peninsula. But this period of ascendance was, by its very nature, precarious. As the dust settled from the Bronze Age collapse, new, formidable empires began to cast their long, dark shadows over the Levant. The first of these, truly a juggernaut of its age, was the Neo-Assyrian Empire. Picture the Assyrians, a people whose very name struck terror into the hearts of their enemies. Their military machine was ruthlessly efficient, driven by a relentless ambition for conquest and control. When King Shalmaneser III ascended to power in 858 BC, he initiated a series of campaigns that would ripple across the Near East. The Phoenician city-states, with their rich ports and valuable resources, were an undeniable prize. Yet, initially, the Assyrians adopted a relatively hands-off approach. Shalmaneser III demanded tribute, substantial tribute, mind you, in bronze, silver, gold, and precious woods from the kings of the seacoast, a clear reference to the Phoenician rulers. But for a time, they were spared outright annexation. They were allowed a degree of freedom, a fragile autonomy that permitted them to continue their lucrative maritime trade, albeit under the watchful eye of their powerful overlords. This delicate balance, this uneasy truce between the powerful and the profitable, wouldn't last. In 744 BC, Tiglath-Pileser III, a name that would become synonymous with Assyrian expansion, seized the throne. Under his reign, the Assyrian grip tightened. Most of the Levant, including parts of northern Phoenicia, were directly annexed into the sprawling empire. Only the strongest and most strategically important cities, Tyre and Byblos, managed to retain their status as tributary states, clinging to a sliver of their independence. The Phoenicians, ever a spirited people despite their limited military, weren't content to simply bow down. Rebellions simmered and occasionally erupted. Tyre, Byblos, and Sidon, each in turn, dared to challenge the Assyrian yoke. Sargon II, another formidable Assyrian king, besieged Tyre in 721 BC, ruthlessly crushing its defiance. His successor, Sennacherib, faced and suppressed further revolts across the region. The cost of resistance was often catastrophic. Sidon, for example, dared to rebel against Esarhaddon in the 7th century BC. Its fate was stark: destruction, its inhabitants enslaved, and a new city built upon its ruins as a chilling warning to others. Can you imagine the terror, the desperation, as these independent, vibrant merchant cities faced the full, unyielding might of the Assyrian war machine? Their advanced ships, so vital for trade, were useless against land-based sieges. Their wealth, once a source of prosperity, now became the very reason for their subjugation. Yet, even empires, no matter how mighty, are not eternal. By the end of the 7th century BC, the Neo-Assyrian Empire, weakened by endless revolts and internal strife, began its inevitable decline. And from its ashes, a new power rose: the Neo-Babylonian Empire. The Babylonians, once vassals themselves, quickly established their own dominion. The Phoenician cities, weary but still defiant, once again found themselves in a precarious position. Rebellions flared up again during the reigns of Nabopolassar and his son, Nebuchadnezzar II, a name perhaps more familiar from biblical accounts. Nebuchadnezzar II famously laid siege to Tyre. Ancient accounts, particularly those from Josephus, speak of a 13-year siege, a monumental test of endurance for both besiegers and besieged. While modern historians debate the exact duration and nature of this epic siege, some suggesting it was more a series of smaller interventions or a limited blockade, the sheer length of the conflict, whatever its precise form, speaks volumes about Tyre's resilience and the Babylonians' determination. Ultimately, Tyre, though not utterly destroyed, remained under Babylonian control. The struggle for autonomy was a constant ebb and flow, a dance of power between the agile city-states and the lumbering empires. When Babylon itself eventually fell to the rising star of Cyrus the Great and his Achaemenid Persian Empire in 539 BC, the Phoenicians made a pragmatic, almost characteristic decision. They yielded. There was no grand, suicidal resistance. Instead, they adapted. Under Persian rule, the Phoenician situation actually improved somewhat. Most of the Levant was consolidated into a single satrapy, or province, and subjected to a yearly tribute. But the Phoenician cities were treated differently. They were divided into 4 vassal kingdoms: Sidon, Tyre, Arwad, and Byblos, and granted considerable autonomy. Unlike other conquered territories, there's no record of Persian administrators directly governing these cities. Local Phoenician kings were allowed to remain in power, even minting their own coinage and passing on their hereditary offices. Why this relative leniency? The answer lies in the Phoenicians' enduring value. Their unparalleled maritime technology and navigational prowess were invaluable to the Persian Empire, which, unlike its predecessors, had significant imperial naval ambitions. It was the Phoenician fleets that formed the backbone of the Persian navy during the Greco-Persian Wars of the late 5th century BC. Phoenician engineers and laborers, under Xerxes' I, were instrumental in constructing the monumental Xerxes Canal and the pontoon bridges that allowed Persian forces to cross into mainland Greece. They were essential to the empire's logistics and its projection of power. However, even this partnership had its perils. The devastating Persian defeat at the Battle of Salamis, a naval battle, led to Xerxes cruelly punishing the Phoenicians, blaming them for cowardice and incompetence. It was a harsh reminder that even indispensable vassals could fall from favor. The mid-4th century BC saw a brief flicker of renewed independence, or at least assertive defiance, when King Tenes of Sidon led a rebellion against Artaxerxes III, even enlisting the help of the Egyptians. But this rebellion, too, was crushed, leading to the utter destruction of Sidon. This event, tragic as it was, inadvertently allowed Tyre to once again rise as the dominant Phoenician city. For 2 decades, Tyre reigned supreme, until the arrival of a force that would forever reshape the ancient world, Alexander the Great. Alexander's military campaigns across Western Asia were swift and brutal. His primary target in the Persian Levant was, naturally, Tyre, then the largest and most important city in the region. The story of Alexander's siege of Tyre is legendary, a testament to both Tyrian defiance and Macedonian engineering. For roughly 7 months, the city resisted, an island fortress seemingly impregnable. But Alexander, with his characteristic ruthlessness and brilliance, built a causeway from the mainland to the island, eventually breaching its defenses. Tyre's refusal to allow Alexander to visit its temple to Melkart, culminating in the killing of his envoys, sealed its horrifying fate. 2,000 of its leading citizens were crucified, a brutal reprisal designed to terrorize any other city contemplating resistance. A puppet ruler was installed, and the rest of Phoenicia, seeing Tyre's horrific end, quickly capitulated. Sidon, ever pragmatic, surrendered peacefully. With Alexander's conquest, the Hellenistic period began. Alexander and his successors, the Seleucids and Ptolemies, pursued policies of Hellenization, spreading Greek culture, language, and religion across their vast new empire. For many conquered peoples, this meant the founding of new Greek cities, the settlement of Macedonian or Greek elites, and the renaming of native places. But here, once again, the Phoenicians proved to be an anomaly. There was no organized, forceful Hellenization in Phoenicia. With only minor exceptions, all Phoenician city-states retained their native names, and Greek settlement and administration appear to have been surprisingly limited. Perhaps it was their long-standing commercial ties with the Greeks, a shared mythology, or simply their enduring cultural resilience. But the Phoenicians maintained a significant degree of cultural autonomy, even under Hellenistic rule. They continued their commercial links with their Western counterparts, as evidenced by Polybius's account of the Seleucid king Demetrius escaping from Rome by boarding a Carthaginian ship delivering goods to Tyre. When Alexander's empire fragmented after his death in 323 BC, Phoenicia found itself caught in the perpetual tug-of-war between the 2 largest successor kingdoms, the Seleucids, based in Syria, and the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt. The region became a battleground during the 40-year Syrian wars, repeatedly changing hands. For a time in the 3rd century BC, Phoenicia was under Ptolemaic rule, only for the Seleucids to reclaim it in the following century. Yet, even under these shifting overlords, the Phoenicians were allowed a considerable degree of autonomy and self-governance. The Seleucid dynastic wars, a period of internal conflict within the Seleucid royal family, provided another window of opportunity for the Phoenician cities. From 157 to 63 BC, many of them were largely self-governed, playing the warring factions off against each other. Some Phoenician regions even fell under Jewish influence after the Maccabean revolt succeeded in defeating the Seleucids. Indeed, a significant portion of the Phoenician diaspora in North Africa even converted to Judaism in the late millennium BC, highlighting the fluidity of cultural and religious identity in this melting pot of ancient civilizations. But all good things, even periods of relative autonomy, must come to an end. The Hellenistic influence on the Levant officially concluded when Tigranes the Great of Armenia seized the Seleucid kingdom in 74-73 BC. The stage was now set for the final act of Phoenician autonomy in their homeland, a story that would ultimately conclude with the rise of the Roman Republic and the tragic demise of their greatest colony. And that, my friends, is where our journey tonight must pause. We've seen the Phoenicians, these tenacious seafarers, navigate the treacherous currents of ancient empires. They were not conquerors, but survivors. Not empire builders in the traditional sense, but cultural and economic conduits. Their story is a testament to resilience, adaptation, and the enduring power of trade and cultural exchange in a world dominated by military might. As you drift off tonight, or continue your tasks, let the echoes of these ancient struggles resonate. The Phoenicians, masters of the waves, faced down giants with ingenuity and pragmatism. Their legacy, though often overlooked, is woven into the very fabric of our modern world, from the alphabet we use to the foundations of global trade. Next time, we'll continue our exploration, perhaps delving into the unique society and culture that allowed them to endure through so much, or turning our attention to their most famous creation, Carthage, and its ultimate clash with the rising power of Rome. Until then, stay curious, keep learning, and let the whispers of history continue to guide you. Good night. And so, our long voyage through the intricate tapestry of Phoenician history comes to a close. From their enigmatic origins on the Levantine coast to their audacious maritime empire, the revolutionary spread of their alphabet, and their enduring struggle for survival amidst the clash of giants, the Phoenicians left an indelible mark. I hope this journey has offered you not just facts, but a deeper connection to these fascinating people. Your thoughts, as always, are invaluable. Please share them in the comments below, and let me know what other hidden chapters of history you'd like us to explore next. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Vibing History for more deep dives into the ancient world. Until next time, keep those historical curiosities alive.